Welcome to the Pipeline Podcast. Today is November 26th, and we got a pretty fun episode. It's very interesting, not a conspiracy though, but we're going to be covering this term called superabundance. The term does come off a little pretentious. Superabundance as a term sounds like it's implying that everyone's going to have an abundance of everything, but when the term superabundance is like thrown around, what it's really saying is that population growth leads to like greater resource abundance. And we're going to be taking a look at this. This is kind of a really important concept that I think everyone should be aware of. And again, we normally cover like current events and conspiracy theories on the channel. This is kind of a different episode tonight, so I hope you like it. But either way, I guess we'll start off with what is superabundance in the first place. So I just have like a little AI breakdown, and then we're going to talk about why it's very important to understand this concept. The term superabundance was coined in this book. It argues human population growth leads to greater resource abundance and innovation. And the book analyzes how increasing populations, combined with freedom and markets, create more ideas and value than are consumed, leading to falling time prices. So time prices we're not really going to get into, but basically that's how they calculate like the price of goods. So they call it time prices. We're kind of going to skip over it, but if you do want to look into this, I encourage you to definitely read this book. And we're just going to continue to break this down a little bit further before we really talk about it, just because I'm sure not a lot of people are familiar with this concept or even what it is. So we kind of have to define it. And the author defines it as the relationship where resource abundance increases faster than population growth. So they're kind of arguing, if you've heard people say like the world can't sustain a certain population, like there's like a max population that we'll get to. This book is kind of arguing the opposite. It's kind of saying, no, like as the population increases, we are actually able to sustain more people because we're able to figure out how to like harvest more resources or create things with less waste. A larger population can provide a wider pool of ideas, skills, and a larger market for new products. So I don't know if you've ever heard someone say like the more diverse like a group of people are, the faster that they can come up with the right solution. So if you have a bunch of people, say you have 10 people that are all from the same area, all have the same interests, same religion, same demographic, they're going to be thinking the same way. And so if you actually have a more diverse group, say that those 10 people are from like different walks of life, they'll look at the questions and they'll look for solutions that not everyone would think of because people think differently. But people do argue against this superabundance, and they'll say that the relationship is more complex and that factors like resource availability, population growth rate, infrastructure, and the concentration of talent in hubs are more significant drivers than sheer numbers. So it's kind of like they're saying that's not necessarily proven, this like superabundance term, which in my opinion it's, as Google AI calls it, a pessimistic view. So like there are people that think we need to like depopulate, we need to stop having so many kids because it's a strain on the earth. And basically in this video, we're going to go over why that's wrong. So again, superabundance, it's this book and it argues human population growth leads to greater resource abundance and innovation. And if you hear that, it might be hard to wrap your brain around that and make it make sense because everyone just kind of assumes if there are more people on the world, the world resources will be more stressed. And so that's kind of why if you saw, the thumbnail, it says population collapse is a lie. It's not a lie for other species like animals and stuff, but as far as humans, it is a lie and it's been proven to be a lie. So we're going to get into some very fun stuff. We're going to start actually looking into like some facts that back this up, that back up kind of what we're trying to talk about and educate the public on. This is almost more of like a PSA video rather than a conspiracy video. Like we normally cover conspiracies on the channel. So anyway, world population, as you see, I'm sure you're already familiar with this, but over time, the human population on Earth does go up. So if you, I know this might I'm not saying that you're stupid, but we have to explain all this. So population over time goes up. I feel like everyone can understand that's a real thing and agrees with it. And it's always been like this. It's always been trending upwards. And then if you notice here around like the 1900s is when it really starts to spike up a lot faster and faster. It's not rising linearly. It's rising exponentially after about 1900s. It's like, X folding. It's not just going up a little by little.
There's a litany of reasons for that, right? When we have development, medicine, which keeps people older, and then technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Like especially like industrialization and being able, like, getting better farm equipment so that we can grow more food to feed more people, to sustain more people.
And most importantly, half of your kids aren't dying in childbirth.
Oh, that's a big one too.
Or dying from some random disease when they're 2.
So yeah, we got to start off with this. Population over time has increased. Everyone can agree on that. We'll go to the next next source we have here. This is the world wealth, so world GDP. We just started off at the 1900s. It's hard to find graphs that go back, for the entirety of history. But as you see, this graph looks very similar to the world population graph. So the world population has gone up, as has the world GDP, and it continues to do so. So it's not downtrending. I mean, it does fluctuate. There are like mild fluctuations, but overall, we're looking at the trend here of like world history. Overall, world GDP goes up, and so does the world population. Next up, we have world production of some resources. So world production of coal, oil, natural gas, iron, and some various other minerals. And I just want to show this graph because it looks similar to the first 2 graphs that we saw. Over time, we're able to produce or mine more coal, oil, natural gas, iron ore. It goes up, basically, is what I'm saying. The last one we're going to look at in this video, but you could really look at any graph of almost anything. Like over time, are there more houses being built? Over time, is there more infrastructure being built? Like the quality of life goes up over time. And then also we're able to do things like mine things, or in this case, this is wheat yields. So it's just looking at the wheat that we harvest every year. And a graph of that tracks back to 1960. It does go back a lot farther, but again, we're kind of looking at specifically the last like 100 or so years. That's when we've seen all these graphs spike. And basically it's the same thing. So over time, we're able to yield more wheat. We're able to harvest more wheat. And we need to do this to sustain the population, obviously. But, what this whole video is saying is we're only able to do this because our population goes up. So if less people were alive, we wouldn't be able to harvest as much wheat. They kind of go hand in hand. People need to eat to survive, but also to increase the population, people need to eat.
But isn't there a cap?
On wheat?
Well, I mean, like you can only have so much land, right, to grow wheat.
Oh, yeah. So we'll get into that. But basically, there are innovations in farming, and you get more innovations by having more like educated people. So even if there is like a cap on the space, which we haven't even used it's not like we're using all the available farmland to grow wheat right now or anything. There is farmland we're not using. But even if we were maxed out on farming land, we would still have people that would find ways to increase like product yields. And the way that happens is because people are being born and being educated, and they increase through innovation and like creative problem solving. They're able to increase yields.
Wow.
I know, crazy.
So you're saying that the more people that we have and we educate them, that they'll be smart enough to figure out how to find out a food crisis?
Yep, exactly. Any crisis, food crisis, climate change, even like a natural disaster, any crisis. The more people that you have working on it, like the faster you'll figure it out.
So the answer is to procreate.
Yes, have more babies. The answer to everything is have more kids. And this and like that's the funny thing is like people hear that in their like cool opinion, bro. But it's like if you just look at history, it's actually the true answer.
Well, yeah, that's true. History, keep more people keep getting bored and more innovations keep getting made.
Yes, and then there is, you could give an example similar to like the stock market. Like over the stock goes up and down, but over time the stock markets only ever go up. It's just a time thing. Same with like world population. So over time it's only gone up.
Well, but I think the whole point is that we've reached an equilibrium point where that we've had too many people and now it's starting to go down.
Right. So that is specifically an issue in like first world countries. What you see when that happens, a great example would be like the United States right now. So like United States population, it gets a little muddy because there's things like immigration and all that. But either way, when these first world countries become fully developed, their populations does start to drop off. And that's basically a bad thing. And then you see that in the US right now. You see a lot of our infrastructure failing. We're not building as many like mega projects. Even scientists are like going to other countries to go do research. But there are a million different factors into all that kind of stuff.
So it sounds like globalists want to reduce the population of breeders and feeders, and other people, the other end on that would be that they want to increase the population to do stuff, make stuff, invent things.
Yeah, basically the superabundance is like it's a very populist take on it. If you think like the humans are destroying the earth, or
Right,
there's
the globalist take, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
if you have that kind of take on it, which statistically you would be wrong if you look at everything. You would say like we need the population to go down. But if the population went down, the world GDP would go down. We'd be able to harvest less resources and grow as much food.
Well, the GDP is all relative, right?
Yeah, it is. But still, it matters.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have more people in the world, there would be more people to sell things to. So
Yeah, more
I would
wealth creation.
assume
Yeah, like the argument is like each person in the world on average creates like more wealth than they take away. And that same thing goes with consumption. They create more things than they actually consume.
well, right. That's the whole point of our Federal Reserve, and how we get our money is based on how much profit or money or GDP output a person is in the United States when they're born.
Facts. And people like to critique that. And there is a real legitimate concern there with all that stuff. But you have to look at it, like look at the trends in the past. So far, it's right. So, as population goes up, people's wealth does increase as well as like resources harvested. And
Well, I mean, conversely, though, look at the income disparity.
yeah,
Is the
so
income
that's a
disparity right
different.
now bigger than it was when there were serfs and kings?
I honestly couldn't tell you about that. Probably yes and no. This is a Wikipedia article that kind of got me onto this. So I learned about this in like it was like some stupid environmental science class. And it's kind of what brought me into this whole superabundance take. So it's this wager between Julian Simon, he's an economist, and a biologist, Paul Ehrlich. And basically, they made a bet that was a mutually agreed on measure of natural resource scarcity over the decade leading up to 1990. The widely followed contest originated in the pages of Social Science Quarterly. Simon challenged Ehrlich to put his money where his mouth was. And then I just want to get into exactly what the bet was. It doesn't matter too much, but it is important. This is a very popular like wager that a lot of people know about. So I just want to cover it. Simon bet 10,000 on his belief that the cost of non-government controlled raw materials will not rise in the long run. So basically they were tracking, I think it was like 5 different materials over a decade to see if the prices of them would go up or down. And you would think the price of something like iron over time would go up because there's only so much of it, right? Scarcity. But in fact, it actually goes down over time because we're able to mine more of it, and we're able to mine it more efficiently because people create new technologies and new innovations to do that. So Simon challenged Ehrlich to choose any raw material he wanted, and a date more than a year away, and he would wager on the inflation-adjusted prices decreasing as opposed to increasing. The materials chosen were copper, chromium, nickel, tin, and tungsten, and the bet was formalized in 1980, and it was going to finish in 1990. That was the end date. And Ehrlich lost the bet as all 5 commodities that were bet on declined in price over that 10-year period, which is a fun thing. And it is hard for people to kind of wrap their head around that and say, like, how could the price of these 5 materials actually go down over the course of 10 years? And again, it's because we find ways to mine better, mine more efficiently, and even mine faster, because we have people being born, and these people that are born, they solve problems, they innovate, they invent things, invent new solutions to like progress humanity. And the only way to really do that is to have more kids. And so this is kind of the wager that this is what people talk about, even though this whole bet, like specifically these 5 materials over that 10-year period, they did go down in price, but that's not always the case. You can't look at every 10-year block of time because there are other factors. But overall, the cost to obtain resources goes down over time and the population goes up. And then I want to go into just iron, because iron is kind of an important one. It's one of the resources of the earth that we use, like we mine the most. I would say like iron and oil are like the top 2. And I just kind of want to show everybody how much of this stuff is in the earth, in that realistically, we're never going to use all of it. But again, like iron might be finite, but we're never going to ever need to use all of Earth's iron. We're never going to struggle with that. So basically, just in the Earth's crust, iron is about 5% of the Earth's crust. And so I just kind of want to try to help everyone visualize what 5% of the Earth's crust like actually is.
And the Earth's crust is a lot bigger than what you remember that you were taught in school. The Earth crust was recently discovered to be very thick.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. And so we're not even going to be including all of the iron in the Earth. We're just talking about the iron that is in the Earth's crust that we could potentially mine. It's not even all the iron. There's even more if you go deeper than the crust, but that's probably a little bit unrealistic to mine. So just in the crust, or about 5% of the Earth's crust is made out of iron. And if you want to know about what that total amount of mass looks like, it's roughly equivalent to the mass of all the oceans on Earth. It's just kind of unrealistic to ever think that we would have a need for all of that iron. So basically what I'm trying to say is iron might not be a renewable resource, but it's never going to run out. That same concept pretty much goes for almost all resources. There are some that are very scarce though. And then here, this is just kind of a visual that breaks it down a little bit. But yeah, so here iron is about 5% of the Earth's crust. Aluminum is about 8%. Calcium 4%, sodium 2%, silicon 28%. You're never gonna run out of these things. Also, you can make the argument that in the future, you could just go to another planet and mine these resources. And so that would be an argument that backs up the superabundance theory. If you are worried about the world running out of resources, well, what you should do is have more kids and make sure they are raised properly so they can grow up to drive innovation. So they can build, space travel, bring us to other planets, build some outer space mining operation. I'm sure that will happen in the future. And next up, this is like a pretty short video, but it's made by Titan Key Media, and they just do a very good job explaining like what we've been saying in this video. So we're gonna watch it and react to it. It's very well made, and I definitely encourage everyone to go check out their channel. Even though I'm not familiar with it, I just saw this video because I was looking for something to help visualize what we've been trying to say about the superabundance. And again, before we start the video, I do think, again, superabundance is a bad term because it does kind of imply that there is a super abundant amount of everything. That's kind of not the case. What it's actually trying to imply is that there's enough of everything for everyone, even at the current rate.
And then real quick, just about the claim about Earth's crust being thicker, we found old continental crust from a long time ago recently, and it was a lot thicker than we originally thought. And that oceanic crusts are also getting thicker right now, while the continental crusts are slightly thinning.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's
So
kind of out of my scope. I'm not familiar with that stuff.
just wanted to provide factual check.
Yeah, like the whole reason I went into like about how much iron there was is just to try to help people visualize it. So if you again, if you want to try to visualize about how much iron there is that we haven't even mined yet, it's about the size, the mass of all the oceans on Earth. So it's just a crazy amount. More than you would ever need. You could completely cover the planet in probably a couple of inches of iron. If you like mined it all. Maybe after the video, we'll ask AI that question, see if we can do that math. But yeah, so we're going to check out this video because it explains it it's a very well-made video that explains it very well.
We are on the brink of catastrophe. The planet only has so many natural resources, and as the world's population grows, the consequences are predictable. We'll run out of food, run out of land, push the environment to the breaking point, and the inevitable outcome will be devastation, increasing poverty, environmental decay, and according to the warnings of one prominent economist, widespread death.
So yeah, that's kind of what people say and people fearmonger over, like, oh, population collapse, we're having too many kids, the world can't sustain it. That's not true, it has never been true, and that's kind of what we've been trying to go over in the video.
The bad news. Or at least it would be, if it wasn't for the good news, which is that the prediction of that economist was actually made over 200 years ago, when the Earth had about 7 billion fewer people. Didn't hold up so well. So why are so many people making the same kinds of predictions today?
I guess to try to answer that question, why are people making those kind of predictions today? I think it's because it is a kind of an out there concept, the superabundance take, and it's hard for people to understand and to just even like visualize in their head.
People, the end is near, is something that humans seem to have thought at virtually every point in their history. In ancient Greece, Aristotle warned that some communities would need to let babies die so that the population wouldn't grow too large to be supported by the land. In England in the late 1700s, an economist named Thomas Malthus wrote an influential book predicting that the population would grow faster than the food supply, leading to famine, disease, and death. And arguing that
And if you want to go back to that,
wrote an influential book predicting that the population would grow faster than the food supply, leading to famine, disease.
How could the population grow faster than the food supply? Because it's like if there were so many people in the world, everyone would be very much aware that you would need to grow food or find ways to make sure we can harvest more food. So the brightest minds would work on that, and that's, people like this Thomas Malthus guy obviously didn't think that through.
Disease and death. And arguing that, as a result, we had to control population levels. And sure, it's easy to imagine that.
And anyone telling you we need to control the population levels, they might think they have good interests behind it, but they're the baddies.
Earlier generations just succumbed to these fears because they didn't know as much as us. But the same kind of ideas have continued to be popular right up to the present day. In 1968, a Stanford biologist named Paul Ehrlich had a bestseller with a book called The Population Bomb, which predicted that overpopulation was going to lead to hundreds of millions of deaths from starvation in the 70s. He was wrong about that, by the way. The famine, not the 70s being tragic. And you may have even noticed similar ideas in your local movie theater in just the past few years.
This universe is finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist.
Good rule of thumb, when you find yourself agreeing with the giant purple guy, it's probably time for a gut check. Unless it's Grimace. That's probably fine. Now here's the thing, this way of looking at the world isn't crazy, even if in the modern world, it's usually wrong. It's true that species can outgrow their resources and suffer mass death as a result. But here's the catch. There's one species that's figured out a workaround. What has two opposable thumbs and hacked the natural order of the universe? That's right, baby, it's humans. And the explanation is pretty simple. As Marion Tupy and Gail Pooley explain in their 2022 book, Superabundance, the reason that humans can often get around the limits of natural resources is because through a combination of scientific advances, economic incentives, and technological innovation, we're consistently able to produce more with less. So, what does this mean in the real world? Let's go back to Paul Ehrlich and the population bomb. Remember Ehrlich's prediction, hundreds of millions of people starving to death in the 1970s. The reality, about 3.5 million deaths from famine over the decade, which is still terrible.
And again, that's one of those things, if you want to look at famine numbers, I don't have it pulled up, but they have gone down over the course of history. So it would be another graph, we're able to harvest more of these resources. We're able to increase world GDP. We're able to farm more crops. And that all is because the world population has gone up. Also, famine numbers have gone down.
Of course, but here's the most important part. Not only was it way lower than predicted, it was also a nearly 80% reduction from the previous decade. At the same time, the world's population was exploding. A big part of the reason why? Because of innovative farming techniques that allowed us to get more food from less land. In the 50 years between 1964 and 2014, the average amount of land needed to provide the same amount of food fell by 2/3. And as you might expect, hunger rates in the developing world fell too. And once you notice this pattern of getting more from less, you'll start to see it everywhere. When aluminum cans were first introduced in 1959, they weighed 85 grams. By 2011, they weighed only 13 grams.
Yeah, and this pattern he's talking about, that's not even a theory, that's just proven if you just look at history.
Your smartphone may be one of the most efficient technologies ever invented, replacing everything from alarm clocks to photo albums to cameras. One study estimated that the rise of smartphones has led to us using 100 times less energy and 300 times less material than we used to for the same tasks. You'd think that a natural resource like oil might be immune to this trend. For decades, in fact, we heard warnings that the world's oil supplies were running out. But in reality, they actually grew by 33% between 2000 and 2020. Because
yeah, and that goes for a lot of other resources as well. And that's kind of why they're able to lower the price over time, not actually increase the price, even if it's not an infinite resource.
Technological breakthroughs behind fracking allowed us to access oil that was previously unretrievable. Now, maybe you're worried that this is just a run of dumb luck, but most indications are that
and statistically, it can't possibly be a run of dumb luck because, you look at all these graphs and it's just the whole time been this way.
These trends are only going to get more pronounced. Because wealthier societies tend to generate fewer children, it's estimated that the world's population will peak by 2080, and perhaps even sooner. The amount of the world's land used for agriculture already peaked back in the year 2000. Famine peaked all the way back in the 1870s. Our footprint is already shrinking, not because we've settled for a lower standard of living, but because a higher one actually does less damage. All of which means we have reason to be optimistic. As long as we preserve the factors that allow us to innovate, our investments in science, economies that reward creativity, a focus on improving the world through technology, it's likely that our societies will continue to get healthier and more prosperous without running up against the limits of nature, which is a big win for humanity and a huge loss for the big purple guy. Whoa, okay, I take it back. Do not trust any of them.
Yeah, to add to that a little bit, there's one thing that we didn't really cover is it's not just having more kids, but it's all the things. It's having more kids, making sure that they're educated, making sure that we're still innovating, that they're able to grow up not in famine, that they're fed well enough. All those factors lead to this superabundance take. And then what I would even say is like, again, I don't like the name superabundance because I think it implies the wrong thing, but this isn't a theory. This is like a proven concept, and it's only ever been true throughout history. It has never been any other way. And then here, I want to talk about the population a little bit because I'm sure you've seen articles that like the world can't sustain more than 9 billion people or something like that. What they're always saying in those articles are basically, first of all, it's an opinion. And second of all, their opinion is based off of how the world currently functions. And the world's going to function differently in the future. So you can never really say this is the max population that we can have because things change over time. But basically, if the world's population was concentrated, this is kind of an example. So if the world's population lived in one city, how large would that city be if it were as dense as like these specific cities? So we'll take a look at New York first. So if the whole world lived in a city like New York, just one big city that was just as dense as New York, the world's population could fit in the size of just Texas, and the rest of the world would be unpopulated. And so again, I'm just trying to get it to where you're able to actually visualize how much room there is on this earth for more people. And again, when you have more people, well, what it leads to is more wealth creation, more minerals harvested, more food produced, less famine, more education, more innovation, all those things. Basically, that was the whole point of this video, to like try to wrap your head around this, try to help you visualize it, because it is, it's an interesting concept that is true though if you just look back at world history. And the whole reason we covered this, so I was thinking like, oh, what should we do for our podcast episode this week? And I'm like, well, I definitely didn't have any good ideas. And I'm like, so I got to do something that we haven't covered on the channel before, but something that obviously influences like kind of how we think on the channel. So the Pipeline Podcast 2025, again, we don't like the name Superabundance, but we're definitely supporters of it. I mean, it's a real thing. It always has been. And it's kind of like a populist take on things. So basically, if you want to save the world, have more kids, not less. And then definitely subscribe to the channel. We're always doing podcast episodes not quite like this. Normally we do current events or conspiracy theories. We also do live streams. Right now we've been reacting to all the drama on the Republican Party after Charlie Kirk died. There's kind of a power struggle going on there, which is super interesting to cover. So if you like that kind of stuff, definitely check out our past streams. And again, subscribe to the channel.